without further ado, I'd like to welcome Xel Lungold back from his tour of Canada with 70 lectures across the Canadian nation. And he's back in Sedona for his second evening presentation here. And he's got some brilliant information to share with you. So I hope you brought paper, or at least a recording device, or your ears. So lend him your ears, and let's give him a welcome.
Hello. Hi, guys. Hello. The first thing I want to find out is how many people have already seen one of my presentations. Okay, about half the room. How many people have studied something about the Mayan calendar already? There is half. Okay. So what we're going to be doing tonight is I've been doing the same talk, the same basic information of discoveries for the last 3.5 years. Tonight is a time to change that. I'm going to go into talking about not so much of history, but what is currently going on right now and what is going to be coming in the future, according to the Mayan calendar. For those people who haven't seen all the basics, we're going to be going through this very, very quickly. And you can get that information from my website or from one of the DVDs or VHS tapes that are out there. But for tonight, we're just going to rip into what I think is more important to everybody. That is, what do we do now? Not what did they do back then. Okay? The whole reason that I got involved in this some years ago was through jewelry. I'm not an archaeologist or any kind of scholar. I'm a jeweler. But I started doing Mayan symbols with my own hands. And those symbols have meanings, very strong meanings, that started to impart themselves onto me. I thought this was very interesting. I looked further into their culture because of that and found out they had a calendar. Some years after I found out about the calendar, about 1.5 years, I actually came up with a formula to convert the Gregorian calendar to the Mayan calendar, and that's what's in here. When this information was published, it went to, eventually made it to Sweden, where Dr. Carl Koloman saw what I had done, and he had been doing his own researches on the Mayan calendar for 7 years. He had been researching facts that could be proven about the Mayan calendar. What he discovered was that there is a basic structure to the calendar. It's actually written in stone in a place called Koba. And what is written in stone is different periods of, or epochs of time. And what Koloman did is he took all that we have found out about our science, from our sciences, of what happened when, and laid it over this pattern. And voila, what showed up is this general movement of evolution of consciousness, which we're going to just go cursory through this basic information. Then we're going to go on to fresh stuff. There are 9 levels to the Mayan calendar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where we are right now is in this 8th level. As a matter of fact, we're in the very middle of this 8th level. Each of these sections, or different levels of evolution of consciousness, are divided into equal sections of 13 periods of time. This very first section was 16.4 billion years long. That is from the Big Bang forward. And there was a particular kind of consciousness that was being laid down step by step by step by stage, all the way across. And this basic consciousness was action, reaction. All the physical laws. I guess everybody here pretty well understands by now that everything is consciousness, right? Yeah. Everything is consciousness. Grass, trees, rocks, this pen. It's all consciousness. And this pen, as a matter of fact, is a very smart pen. It knows exactly what to do. It has a consciousness which registers what to do. Watch. It followed those laws. That's the level of the pen's consciousness. Action, reaction. I mean, we all know that things are conscious. We've proven it to ourselves. By going and washing your car, it runs better, doesn't it?
Or it rains.
Or it rains. But things contain consciousness at different levels. Objects have this consciousness of action, reaction. Is that pretty simple? Okay. The very next picture on this rock in Koba shows a time period 820 million years long. So 820 million years ago, a whole other cycle started. At number one, it started going through this whole process again. This time, building a different kind of consciousness. The consciousness of stimulus response. There's a difference between stimulus response and action reaction, isn't there? The major difference is that there's more consciousness in stimulus response than there is in action reaction. All these laws were laid down, all these steps and stages were taken until way over here, the very last section here. This is when life showed up, the first living cell, 1.26 billion years ago. And ever since then, it has been going through, now, instead of just action reaction, we have life, animate, that starts to organize into higher and higher levels of life. We end up eventually, over here the last 63.4 million years, with mammals. Started out with multicellular organisms that grew into plants and then into mollusks and fishes and insects and birds and all the way through. By the way, in these books is very detailed information about each one of these steps and stages and how it has all come down on schedule. This is not a random creation. We have free will within it, but we are on a schedule, which is wonderful, as you'll see in a minute. This next stage, 41 million years ago is when it started, and 40 million years ago is when monkeys showed up on this planet. And they were developing a different kind of consciousness, and that is stimulus individual response. Now, down here, life had organized itself into things like nests and swarms and flocks and hives and herds. That's this kind of consciousness, stimulus response. But here, we entered into a whole other kind of consciousness, a familial consciousness. What's the difference between a family and a herd? The recognition of individuals. Now, this is a big difference. Stimulus response, stimulus individual response sounds the same, but is a huge difference, and you've experienced it. There's times when you felt really good about just being yourself. And then there's other times when you felt like you were part of the herd. Like waiting online at some big sporting event or stuck in traffic. Check your consciousness levels. When you're feeling good about yourself and when you're stuck in traffic. There is a big difference in consciousness. And that whole thing, this whole level, 41 million years of it, helped us to develop better ways to interrelate or intercommunicate. We move up to the tribal cycle that started 2 million years ago. 2 million years ago was when the first Australopithecus showed up, the first tailless ape, which is called Lucy. And this whole level was about a new kind of consciousness called similarities and differences. This whole 2 million years here was the evolution of a tool called your mind. Down here, we developed the brain. Up here, the brain was enlarged. But here, we went on to develop the mind, the ability to see similarities and differences and make decisions about things rather than just reacting. This is another huge step forward for all of consciousness. 102,000 years ago, we're still living in the caves. But we began here, right here. This is when we started speaking to one another. Right at the very beginning of that cycle. And this whole cycle was developing a new consciousness called reasons. The reasons for things. Here we're able to make decisions, but here we started coming up with reasons. The first people to do that ended up being called shamans, or the leaders of the tribe, or the people gathered in the caves. They had all of the myths and all the establishments of religion, all came from this process, right through here. All the reasons for living. In fact, a culture is a group of people who share reasons. They share the same reasons for things. All of cosmology is a list of reasons of creation. All of theosophy is the same thing. So the basis of culture is shared reasons. 8,000 years ago, by the way, we came up with agriculture. And mankind more or less settled down from a very nomadic life before that. 3115 BC, we started what's called the national cycle. This is also called the Great Cycle by the Maya. And this period right here is when we learned how to write. That's right in here. Well, actually, it was 3110 that we learned to write. So all of this down here is her story, and everything up here is his story. And that's very important. This is all nurturing and support. This has all been production. More and more rapid evolution. This whole line across here, this last 5,000 years, there's been a new kind of consciousness which has been evolved. And that consciousness is called law. And boy, do we know there's an evolution going on. Because the consciousness of law has certainly gone past reason, hasn't it? It really has. Just one little simple example. There are 16 million laws on the books. And you are personally responsible for knowing every single one of them. Ignorance is no defense. Unless you happen to be a lawyer. They're absolved from that. Which is beyond reason. But there's lots more we could go into, but that's another lecture. Planetary consciousness started 1755 AD, which happens to be the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And this whole cycle was all about the production and the consolidation of power. Power. For the last 200 some odd years, all of consciousness throughout our whole galaxy has been aimed at power. Have you noticed that there's a lot of power in few hands? Have you been upset about that? I have. I have been since the 70s, or 60s, 67, 68, right in there. I've been personally very upset that most of the power sat in very few people's hands and the rest of us are just sucking it. Until I came across this information and I went, oh my goodness. This is not my fault. It's not their fault. All of creation is doing this. The WTO is just a, you know what the WTO is, the World Trade Organization, is only a further manifestation of consciousness to consolidate power, to bring it into focus. And we've been doing that. Now, the people who are up there in the charge of all this, they don't know they're working on behalf of consciousness. They think they want a bigger bank account. But in fact, they are. And when you go through the details of this, through all of our history here, all the horrible things that people have done to one another and back and forth, it all turns out that they were doing things specifically on schedule. Genghis Khan, for instance, his whole adventure was to open the consciousness of East to the West. He put it together. All of that action was just to bring that about. And specifically, right on schedule. galactic consciousness, we started January 5th, 1999. This is the most recent beginning. And this consciousness cycle is all about developing and dispensing the consciousness of ethics. Now, ethics and morals are two different things, so I want to make sure we got that straight. Ethics comes from inside your heart and shine out into the world. It's your own innate ability or consciousness of what's right and wrong. Morals, on the other hand, morals are reasons. There's a moral for why you tell the story, right? That's the reason you told the story. Morals are the rules or regulations that are handed down through cultures on what's appropriate, what's inappropriate in that culture. Completely different than ethics. Morals come from outside and are laid on you, like a blanket. Ethics shines from inside you out into the world. A good example of that, or a bad example of that, is that we are, America, is totally morally justified to be over in Iraq, doing everything that they're doing. They are morally justified. But they don't have an ethical stick to stand on. There's a big difference between the two. What this whole consciousness cycle is ethics. That coming forward in each person. Ethics and integrity are the issue of the day, aren't they? I don't mean just in corporations and in nations and in religions, but even in your own lives. I mean, your own relationships. It's coming down to integrity and ethics. That's because consciousness is everything is moving in that direction. We see what looks like a whole lot of trouble in the world, don't we? Don't we? Okay, I mean, I know you don't want to look any more than I do at what's going on out there. It looks ugly. But specifically what's going on is a wrestling match between the consciousness of ethics and the consciousness of power. In each one of these levels, the new consciousness coming in has dominated the old consciousness on the fourth day. During and just after the fourth day of every one of these cycles, the new consciousness dominates the old. Where we are right now is the beginning, is right here in the fourth day. We're right at that pivot point. It looks like this. Here is all of the consciousness up to power, sitting right there. And here comes the consciousness of ethics. And it comes like this. And it looms over power, and it gets to the middle point, and it goes, bud, like that. And we have the historical record that it happened again and again and again, every time on the fourth day. Here we are again. The last time we were in the fourth day was 1873 to 1893. And that's when power overcame law. It happened actually in a court decision that corporations were granted all of the rights of individuals. And at the same time, all of you wonderful natural-born individuals were assigned corporate status. That's your name in all capital letters. Oh, you guys are starting to learn a lot more about that, I know. Power overcame law. Corporate rule overcame government by the people for the people. Not just in this country, but everywhere. Notice, you can't have ethics unless you have some power first. If you're running for your life, ethics is one of the last considerations you're going to have. But when you can at least hold your own ground, then you can start establishing your personal integrity and presenting ethics. Consciousness had to provide the power first. before the finer tuning or steering could come into effect, the ethics. And that's what we're in right now. Now there is another cycle, the last cycle of this Mayan calendar. It's called the Universal Consciousness Cycle. It begins February 10, 2011. And this whole consciousness cycle is conscious co-creation. Conscious co-creation. That's what this evolution has been all about. It is us rejoining creation as knowing creators. We've had a lapse of our memory for whatever reason or whatever. I think it's been all part of a very elaborate and entertaining game. Myself, one that's taken quite a few million years, if not a billion years, to work our way up and out of the whole problem. This conscious co-creation is why we're here. I mean, it's obvious that we're co-creating this experience, isn't it? I mean, if you weren't here, ma'am, this event wouldn't be happening. It'd be different. So we are co-creating this experience. If I wasn't here, this wouldn't be happening at all. So we're co-creating, and we've been doing that with everyone in every situation all of our lives. Just not as consciously as we wished.
I have a question.
Sure.
If we're in day 4 of ethics, how long of a time span is
Okay.
that?
Good. Over here on this side, the blue numbers, what that describes is how long one of these days or nights are. There's 7 days to each of these levels of creation and 6 nights. But one of these days on this first level was 1.26 billion years long. Things were moving really slow. But the very next one is only 63.4 million years long. In other words, 20 times shorter. Same amount of change, same amount of evolution, but 20 times faster. In the very next cycle, 20 times faster again, and again, and again, and again. We have an explanation or an example of how this consciousness affects our lives. For instance, we were all born right in around here somewhere in this cycle. Things were changing one of these days and nights every 19.7 years. And all of us were born to some very nice people who raised us up as best they could until we got to be 11 to 16, somewhere in there. And we started noticing something about these people who claimed to be our parents. There was something, I mean, no matter how politely you went about this or not, there was something obviously missing in these folks.
Our true relationship became apparent.
Yeah, it was very apparent. Although how we could have evolved from that was a mystery. These guys, your parents, it became kind of obvious that they were slow. Not quite able to pick up information as quickly as you could and apply it to positive solutions. Well, that difference was called the generation gap. And the generation gap was 20 years long by study. So what we have here is the difference between your viewpoint and your parents' viewpoint is the difference between this and that. No matter how long it took to change, that's how much change there was in consciousness. Now, the same amount of change that was happening every 20 years is happening every 360 days. Does it look to you like time is speeding up? Okay, now we know for sure it's not. Creation is speeding up. There's more happening in less time. And that's been the pattern for 16 billion years now. More and more and more is happening in every moment than ever was available before in any civilization, anywhere, everywhere. When more is possible to happen in every moment, there's more possible outcomes, which opens the door to things called miracles. Things that weren't possible to happen that quickly are now possible, like cell phones, for instance. You want to call France? You can do it on the corner. That was completely impossible. Even here, 1999, that was not impossible. So we're going to see more and more acceleration, more and more coming to be possible, more and more opportunities, and that's mostly what we're going to be talking about tonight. That and this ethics and integrity. We have certain tools in our possession. You don't have to buy anything, you don't have to study anything, you don't have to meditate, you don't have to do nothing except just participate consciously in more possibility. That's all we need to do. So, this, I could run through this just a little bit, but I think I'm not going to do that tonight. The developments that happen. The fifth day and the fifth night are big events in each one of these cycles. We're coming up on another fifth day right out here. Maybe we'll talk about it toward the end.
I was going to say, could you just pick a couple that were the most prominent?
I'll pick some that are no, why not? Here we go. During the fifth day is when things really get going in any one of these cycles. The first one was the development of our solar system. The second one was when life moved out of the water, it developed down in the water, onto land during the fifth day. During this period of time, color vision occurred. During this time, man discovered fire during that fifth day. In this fifth day, art. In this fifth day, this is when Jesus' message was going out all over the planet. Then here, in the last fifth day, was when we got, this was 1913 to 1932, and this is EMC, or E equals MC squared, and also Mr. Hubble discovered that we lived in an infinite universe. So we got the blueprint of our reality, with the theory of relativity, and we got the idea that we live in an infinite universe where everything is possible. Big opening for consciousness. Now during the nights, remember there's all kinds of stuff going on, but what happened here was 250 million years of meteor bombardment on the planet. All the leftover junk from the solar system slamming into the planets and moons. The moon still has all the stars. Here in the fifth night, 97% of all life was wiped out in the Perm-Jurassic extinction period. Here we don't know exactly what happened. Don't have enough data yet. But here, 680,000 years ago, we had the Ice Age. Good thing we had fire, huh?
Fire and ice.
I'm telling you, especially when you get into the detail of this, you're going to see very, very plainly that consciousness has been provided exactly the tools that it's needed to go to the next step. So all the kind of worrying and fretting about what might happen really shouldn't be going on. We have the proof that consciousness has a plan. And we're all part of it. Then the next, this right here, we went in from art. 32,000 years ago, Neanderthal went extinct during that fifth night. They just couldn't keep pace. In fact, basically art is imagination. These guys didn't have any. Here was Christ's message, very upsetting, so upsetting that 415 years later, Rome fell. And it didn't fall because the swords went dull, or the spears drooped. It went down because consciousness changed. It's happening again. We're watching it happen again. Consciousness changing. Right over the top of a government. So here, in the ethics period, in the fifth day, what we should be seeing is the neighbors. We should be meeting our galactic neighbors in and about them. Plus all kinds of wonderful technologies. 1873 to 1893, by the way, which was the fourth day of this cycle, was when Nikola Tesla developed free energy. That's when he was doing all his work. Power squashed his researches. But here we are, full circle, back again. So during this period of time, by November of this year is the end of this fourth day, there will be, to consciousness, there will be an exposure of the fact of free energy. Talk about a change on power. We're going to see a big shift. And that's challenging enough in itself. We've got this descending time order here. Right now, things are changing every 360 days. There's a step in evolution. But here, every 20 days, there'll be the same amount of change or shift as there is in a year now. Now, this is presenting a real problem to the mind. Remember, we went along, we developed this mind over this 2 million year period to see the similarities and differences between things. It has a speed limit. 24 thoughts per second. That's as fast as your mind can process anything. 24 frames per second. That's how movies work. Special effects and all that are worked off of that. So as more and more information is piled in on this mind, it can process less and less of it. You understand? This causes stress on the whole system. It's part of our evolution. I mean, it was built right in. If you're not sure about something, your body starts to get tense and stressful, so you would leave that situation and go to some place that's more comfortable. It's very natural. Well, we aren't living so naturally. We've kind of got to where we started to adapt to stress and having big physical problems and mental lapses, and even now there's things like, well, there's the fight and flight syndrome, which is road rage and desk rage and spousal abuse and Columbine High School and terrorism is all the fight or flight syndrome. And then the mind has another plan too. If that doesn't happen or handle it, then the mind just goes unconscious or pretends not to see. And that is what we see a lot around us, don't we? People into all sorts of distractions to keep them unconscious of what's actually going on in their lives. So the mind is having a problem. And as long as mankind is associated with his mind, or believing what his mind tells him, then he's going to have some problems. On the other hand, there's a whole other system that we came here with, that you're born with. It's called your intuition. It's pretty obvious that everybody's going to go out of their mind pretty soon, because things are just going to keep on accelerating, and what you thought you were going to do 15 minutes ago, you can't do now because blah, blah, blah. The mind's just going to go, boom. Your intuition doesn't have any speed limit. It doesn't have any speed. Your intuition is your own connection to your inner knowing, your own personal knowing, which is part of all that can be known. It's sort of like this. We have, here's you, or your consciousness. Let's not even count your body right now. Let's just say, here's your consciousness, right here. Your consciousness is sort of like this. It's oriented. Your consciousness is always oriented by time and place. Time and place. As a matter of fact, it's happening right now. Some time ago, you heard about this talk. You decided to come to this time and place. And you made all the decisions and all the actions to make that happen. Congratulations and welcome. Here we are, in this moment of time and place. Now, this we call 3D. But 3D is an emanation from up here. We're going to call this fifth dimensional up here, 5D. This little star over here is all potential. It's everything that could possibly happen. Infinity, all that. And from that point, we can call it a point, is this flow, like this. It's this flow of event. And what we do is we receive this fifth dimensional flow comes out, or the fifth dimensional potential comes out through the fourth dimension into the third. Got it? Like step back. It comes out of all what could happen through time. It comes into manifestation at this time and place. Have you ever noticed that your intuition is pretty much always right? Have you?
Oh, yeah.
Have you noticed it's more right than your mind? Remember your second grade teacher, third grade teachers told you when taking a test, always use your first answer? Because the second one's going to be wrong. That second answer came from your mind, people. The first answer came from your intuition. So your intuition is right a whole lot of the time. Why would that be? It's just possible that when you're in your intuition, when you are centered in this time and place, and you're in your intuition, doesn't it feel like you're on a track, or just like you're in the zone? In fact, there's a name for that. It's like athletes call it the zone. When you're in that zone, it just feels natural and like you just know the right thing to do. You're centered. When you're there, it's just possible that that's the staging for actually creating your future. Well, it would handily explain why your intuition was so right, wouldn't it? If you're creating your next moment, and we're going to look at how that might just be the fact. We see these in consecutive moments, but it's actually all a flow, or happening at the same time. This is creation's flow right here. Creation's flow. And what you do with your consciousness, or what can be done with your consciousness, is you can tune to this flow. Have you ever heard of the word entrainment? Entrainment, it's a scientific term for something that scientists can't really explain. It's how mechanical things, and certainly life organisms, go into syncopation together. You put two machines right next to each other, and they will start to operate similarly. Two cuckoo clocks on the wall, or a whole line of them. You can get them all ticking and talking at different times, and in a week, they'll all be ticking and talking at the same time. That's called entrainment. Things getting into alignment. It's a very natural phenomenon. Well, this Mayan calendar was never a calendar. Never. It was always a meter. A meter of what? Creation. This, day by day by day, has been keeping track of the flow, the rate, and the intent of creation. As a simple law, I think it's the one law in the universe. There's one law, and everything else comes from that. What you pay attention to, you become conscious of. You can't break that rule. Once you paid attention to something, now you're conscious of it. Don't think of a pink elephant. That kind of thing. So, the whole purpose of this Mayan calendar for the whole Mayan civilization and us today is to, if you're paying attention day by day to the flow of creation, then what do you become conscious of? The flow of creation. And the flow of creation contains all that can be known, including your intuition. Does that make sense? I mean, if that's too simple, I'm not even sorry. The truth is always simple, isn't it? It's those lies that get really complicated. So, intuition is going to be our lifeline through the coming situations. You're not going to have time to sit down and think your way through all of the circumstances that we're going to be presented with. You're just going to have to just do it. Nike had it right. In fact, I love I got to meet their advertising guy. If anybody knows him, I want to know. Because they got a new advertising slogan now. I don't know if you've seen the new Nike commercial. It says, "You are faster than you think." These guys have been watching my talks, I guess. I don't know. But this is the whole purpose of the Mayan calendar is to engage your intuition. Now we've got these right back on the table during the break. We'll have them for sale too. We sell them for $20, and they're a Mayan calendar that will go through, and you pick the month and day on the Gregorian calendar and the Gregorian year. You add those two numbers together, and you come up with through the formula to what day it is in the Mayan calendar. Today, by the way, is 5 star. 5 is the energy or intention of empowerment and centering. And star is the energy of abundance in all things. Like a star that just gives and gives and gives. That's what today's about. The empowerment of abundance. So that's what today, let's just say this is today, that's what's on the roster, on the menu for today on creation. Tomorrow will be 6 offerings. And then it'll go on, each with a different meaning. But the whole purpose is to just, like I said, the calendar is to entrain your consciousness to allow or open to your intuition. Now there is a way that we address 3D. And that is, from our time and place, we pay attention to what's in front of us, to what's actually there. Your mind has a hard time doing this, because your mind doesn't even exist in the present. It only exists either in the past or the future. You notice that? When you're really into exactly what you're doing, you're not thinking about nothing, are you? You're just doing it. Then, when you're not so into what you're doing, your mind is like off and running. Into the future, into the past, into the what may be and what could have been, should have. Ooh. We know too well that. But how you address 3D is by paying attention to the time and place that you're at. Then, we develop an intent, an intention. An intention is a focus of your attention. An intention. What is it that you desire in the next moment? This is where you're getting set up. Now, the better attention you're paying, the stronger your intention. Have you ever tried to play Frisbee with somebody who didn't want to play? They were not paying attention to what you wanted to do with it. So you throw them the Frisbee, and they get it, and they, oh, well, okay. Go pick it up, and then they just flip it. Well, they didn't have a very strong intention because they didn't really want to pay attention to what was going on right there. It's the same with paying your bills and all kinds of other things. Then, once you got the intention, then we have this one right here, which is really important. Integrity. integrity. We address the physical universe with our own personal integrity. You say you're going to do something, you do it, don't you? That's your integrity. You paid attention, you got an intention, now it's time to use your integrity to bring it about. Without integrity, it doesn't happen. Then we have this down here. Intuition. Your intuition. Knowing the right thing to do at the right time. How many people in this room have been in an automobile accident? Or some sort of an accident that could have taken your life? Okay, how many people saw time slow down? Were you paying attention during those moments? You were doing nothing but paying attention, right? Did you have an intention? Oh, yeah. We're going to make it through this one with all of our parts. Did you have integrity? I don't see any missing parts. And intuition. Now, when you were in that moment, you were solidly in your intuition, weren't you? You knew exactly what to either do or not do to get through that, didn't you?
But it didn't happen with the mind.
It didn't happen with the mind. I mean, after it was all over with, after you survived and everything, all the pieces were picked up, then's when your mind went, what could have happened? That's when the shock set in, when your mind touched you.
Post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Post-traumatic stress. That's right. Right in the moment, you were in your intuition. This is the kind of thing that we're going to be moving further and further into as we evolve consciously. Because events are going to be happening more and more like that automobile accident. Just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, everything happening quick. And it's going to be your own trust of you knowing what to do that'll get you through it. You stop to think about it, I'm sorry. There's more detail about that but later. So, intuition is going to be the key. In fact, I mean, we all kind of know that already. That's what we've been doing all of our... I mean, how many people have been in this for like 20 years or more? Okay. I mean, I bet everybody in here has read a stack of books, at least this high. Right? And what were they all about? Every bit of it was about your intuition, wasn't it? This way or that way to get your intuition in gear and keep it there. Well, now it's not just a study or just a practice. Now it's going to have to be applied. We're all creators, but the thing that we want to create most is peace of mind, isn't it? I mean, I think that's the most useful thing to have, is peace of mind. A stable base that you can then operate from. A calm, knowing, thing. Great, peace of mind. Well, at least half of those books were about peace of mind, weren't they? And peace of mind seems to come and go. I kind of boiled it down a little bit on where or why it goes. Because I thought that was really important to know. And what it came to was, anytime something happened in my life that I didn't intend, my peace of mind could leave. Whether it was something exciting and surprising, or something deeply depressing, or infuriating. It was those times that I was knocked off and my mind took over. There went the intuition, there went the peace of mind, because something happened that I didn't intend. Like, losing somebody's phone number, or my wallet. I didn't intend that. Right? So, how do you build peace of mind, and how do you get it back? Every time. Well, here, let's look. Peace of mind only happens when you're centered. Yes or no? When you are centered, we're going to put centeredness here. Centeredness is the criteria. You got to be centered to have peace of mind. Good advice, but how do you get centered? Where does that come from? Centeredness comes from certainty. When you're certain about stuff, then you're centered. Has anybody taken dance lessons? Two-step or tango or any of that, cha-cha, any of that? Okay. When you first started taking those lessons, did you have peace of mind?
Hell.
No. Were you centered? No. Not unless it was my right foot over my left. Centeredness. Certainty? Well, no, there wasn't any. Not until you had recognized the patterns associated with the dance did you get certainty. And then some centeredness, balance, and peace of mind out on the dance floor. Same thing happened when you were learning how to tie your shoes. Same thing happened when you were first learning how to drive, or operate a computer, or do math. Every single thing you've ever done has gone through this. When you recognize the patterns, then you became certain, then you were centered, then you could have peace of mind about that. So, the task then is to every time something happens that disturbs your peace of mind, immediately look for the pattern. Wow. Is there a pattern here? I found one right away every time I looked. First of all, if I was upset, I'd say, is there a pattern here? Yeah, I've been upset like this before. I've had this experience before. May go over something different, but I've had the same feelings, the same reactions as before. There's a pattern. And right away, immediately, I got more certain. I got certain I was upset. Rather than just being upset, you know the difference? When you're just ranting and raving and screaming and la la la, or you just sit there and you go, wow, I'm upset. Big difference, isn't it? The more you recognize the pattern, the more certainty you get, the more centeredness, the more you can do about the situation. Like I said, these are tools we've already got. We don't have to go buy anything. You don't have to read another book. Yeah, we don't have the time to read a book. We got phones to answer. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's going on in our civilization is that once you recognize the pattern, that's all great. Then we do this. We repeat the pattern. Repeating the pattern is kind of comfortable, you know? It's familiar. We repeat the pattern. And then we repeat the pattern again. Now, this isn't only just done on our part. It's done by our societies. We repeat the pattern, and repeat it, 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 and... You know what happens when you do that? Hypnotism.
This is without recognizing that there's a pattern.
This is, like for instance, when you go drive, I've been driving around Canada and U.S. too, and I've noticed that I could drive into any city and pretty much know within 10, 15 minutes where stuff was, because they're all set up the same. There's zoning laws, you know. Well, all the industry is going to be over here on this side, out of town. All the major shopping is going to be right over in here somewhere. And then when you get to the shopping center, it's a McDonald's and a Wendy's and a Burger King next to a Home Depot, which is next to a Radio Shack, and it's boom, 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 like a pattern, like a formula. You understand how many formulas and patterns we have that we're living in? It's pattern, 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 repeated, repeated, repeated. From when you first started going to school, even before that, with television. Repeated, 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 repeated. More and more and more, which lays in hypnotism. Now, how do you break out of that? How do you break out of a hypnotic state? You do something different. That's how you do it. You make a novel thought or action is how you do it. And you wake right up out of this. Like on vacations. How many people take a vacation? Pretty much everybody. Okay. Did you feel different? Did you feel more alive? You know, like food tasted better? You know? Why was that? Because you were spending more money? No. It's because you were doing something different. Now, the camera's on me, not on anybody else. How many people in this room have driven to their place of work or home, and then as you're sitting there, you realize you don't remember driving home or to work? That's hypnotism. Okay? We're going to take just a short break for the tape, and then we'll be right back to this. It's just like 3 minutes, just long enough for him to get that tape. Okay, now just before the break we were talking about hypnotism. And this hypnotism is being done on purpose to the whole world population. You understand that the kings of Babylonia very well understood the whole principle of hypnotism. So kings and rulers have had some 5,000 years to practice on how to hypnotize people. And why would they want them to be hypnotized? Because there, when a person is hypnotized, they are being created. Up at the top, see, we're creating. But down here, we're being created. Created as what? Well, created as Christians. Or Catholics. Or Americans. Or Russians. Or Britney Spears wannabes. Or Howard Hughes wannabes. Being created into consumers. Being created into identities that can be then steered. And that's basically what's going on in our civilization. You know, I was up in Canada, and I asked people about vacations. In Canada, people take at least 3 weeks a year vacation. 3 months in France, you're right. Other countries. Do you know, have you seen the commercial on television? Just recently, there's this good-looking corporate guy sitting there, and he says, "Thanks, your time is our money. Thanks to you, less than 25% of Americans take vacation. On average, the working stiff takes 6 days a year. Other than that, it's nose to the grindstone doing the same thing over and over and over again. Purposefully hypnotizing people. You know, I've been out there, and the rest of the world has some pretty dismal ideas about you Americans. I say you Americans because I'm not one anymore. Thank goodness. I can show you how to do that too. But these guys think that you're blithering idiots. They think that Americans are just stupid. We're not stupid. We're hypnotized. That's why we can't see the nose on our face. That's why most of the people that could do something different about it aren't standing up to Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and all that because of the hypnotism. So, what's that?
It's not just Americans.
It's not just Americans, but I'm talking to you guys right now. This system is going on everywhere. In nature, this doesn't happen. In nature, you have to handle different stuff happening all the time. Because nature doesn't run on a regular schedule. It doesn't do things in a repetitive manner. Constantly throws you curves. Now, you guys have heard as above, so below, right? You believe it?
Yeah.
Well then, don't you know that also means so below as above? It ain't a one-way street. So there are certain physical principles that we can look at that then translate into higher aspects. Like this, for instance. This is my best attempt at a gyroscope. A gyroscope is a balanced mass around an acknowledged center. Here's a balanced mass, the whole enchilada, around the center. Now, we, each of us, have a center. And that center is your intuition. Do you go with that? Your intuition is your center. Now, the way a gyroscope works is you move it, the faster, as a matter of fact, the faster you move it, the more change you introduce to this balanced mass, the more stable the whole thing gets. This is wonderful. We have a constant acceleration of change as our future. Everything is going to be changing faster and faster and faster. What that means is that as a being, as long as you're centered, you're going to be getting more and more stable. It's already happening. More and more people are learning that their intuition is the tool to use to survive. They're getting more certain about that. Have you heard about the elephants in the Tasami? Right? All the animals made it out of there. Their intuition brought them along. Did you hear about the stories about in the Midwest? They just had 500 tornadoes this last year. And there were lots and lots of stories of miracle survival. And it was always, the bottom line, the same word and the same story was intention, or intuition, or just knowing what to do, or what not to do. This is getting more and more public, that intuition is the way through. And as more and more and more changes in your consciousness of 3D, this is all of this is your consciousness over here, of your experience in 3D, the faster and faster it changes, the more and more you're noticing. So the more and more stable or centered you become. Now, that's how it would naturally go. What happens if you do this? Let's take a chunk out of the integrity of this gyroscope. And this, now we're getting a look at what's going on and why it seems so difficult. You take a chunk out of this, and now let's spin it and see what happens. It's going to break this axle right off. Without the integrity, this centering doesn't occur. You know some people who don't believe in their intuition? Don't even think it's there? You know those people very good? Because I'll bet you look into their lives and there's going to be some integrity issues. What happens, see, is as soon as you step out of your own integrity, your mind steps in with all the reasons that you're not in your integrity. All the excuses. And it just keeps coming. 24 per second. When I'm talking about personal integrity, I mean following your heart. That's your integrity. Following your heart. And people have all sorts of reasons for not doing that, don't they? And the people with the most reasons have the less trust in their intuition. Have you seen that? They don't believe it's there, they don't trust it's there. Because the mind has stepped in between them and their intuition. I know people who are working at jobs that know that the job is killing them. And their relationships. And they keep going. Because they have to pay the bills. You see, there is two brands of integrity. There's two brands. There's personal integrity, which is fullness and forthrightness. And then there's institutional integrity. Institutional integrity, or power integrity, is can you keep a secret? That's their integrity. Can you hold a secret? If you can, you're an honorable man. And if you can't, you're not going to go any higher. That's the way that works. So power has had its own brand of integrity, but it hasn't been a wholeness. There have been secrets. There have been holes in this balanced mass. And what we're seeing now, as things speed up, as circumstances come faster and faster, we're seeing corporations, religions, relationships of all kinds flying apart for the lack of integrity. That's what's coming forward. That's what like I said before, integrity and ethics is the issue. And it's going to become more and more so from here on forward. Now, there is no thing to do about this. There's no doing here. There's not really any having here either. There is being. And that's where we're headed back. Back to being. And I wanted to show you this next chart here about how we manifest ourselves into new states of being or new states of havingness and doing. And it's a regular formula that we can follow. I'm going to go through this again and we'll do a little bit more detail to it. Attention. These are the foundations of manifestation in the third dimension. First of all, attention. Showing up. Registering, witnessing what's going on. It's not easy to do this. Have you ever sat down in front of somebody, even somebody you like, and just try to pay attention, just look at them in the eyes, and have them just look back at you? I mean, 5 minutes into it, your eyes feel like they're going to burn out of your head. All you want to do is just pay attention. Well, sometimes things hurt. It's hard to pay attention during that. Sometimes things feel really, really good. Or people back off from that experience. Blown away. And they stop paying attention. They disconnect. It's like pulling an appliance out of the wall. Boom. It just, you have to be paying attention. And having an intent, an intention of what you will be in the future. This is, your intention is you setting yourself up to be, to exist in a future moment with certain circumstances. Future, here we go. When you're paying close attention to what's actually going on, and you have an intention, you're set up for being able to create or manifest your future. It's like this. You're walking through the garden. You're paying attention to the ground and where the steps are and where the holes might be. This way you make it through the garden. If you're not paying attention to where you're walking on the plants, which isn't a part of your intention, do you see? It's just that on your face. Attention first, intention. Integrity. Integrity is the gatekeeper. If you don't have personal integrity, then you're not going to be able to touch or contact your intuition, which is your connection to Source. And there, your ability to manifest goes right out the window. Attention, intention, integrity, and intuition. Integrity, this is like I said before, is a fail-safe for being able to manifest what it is that you desire, or what it is that, when I say you desire, I'm saying that to this group because we all desire to evolve and help each other evolve. We know that. This whole working, this whole foundations of magics, is not so much for us and what we specifically want, like, 2 Jaguars and a yacht or anything like that. This is about manifesting the next steps in our evolution. What is it going to take for us to continue to go higher and higher in our abilities and be more and more responsible? And it takes these steps and stages. It's not only about stuff. Understand? It's about states of being. How do you manifest higher and higher states of being? Paying attention with an intention, in integrity, so that you're connected to Source. I mean, all of us, we have been doing in order to have. I mean, since you were a little kid, what are you going to do when you grow up, right? It's like, here we are, we've been doing stuff in order to have things. And it's gotten to where now we have to do stuff. You have to do it. Just to keep yourself going. The thing that we've missed out completely, or most of society has, is the being part. Be, do, have. So now we're just working it the other way around. Now we have these tools. You have these tools. You can do the paying of attention, the setting of an intention, working on your integrity, being forthright and honest, and even if it's just admitting mistakes, and then connecting to your intuition. That's what makes it happen. This is going to be played out. Integrity means sustainability. A system that has integrity will last and will go on. A system that doesn't have integrity falls apart and quits. I've had cars like that. I bought them with, they had good integrity. But then I drove them for a while and I didn't pay that much attention to that noise. I intended to fix it sometime or another. But it started. Car started. So I drive it to the store and you keep just doing that, and eventually, wham! It broke. What a surprise. The integrity had deteriorated to where it just wasn't going to do it. And of course, then my intuition was out the window. I was very upset. How could this happen to me? And it was just not following this formula. That's all it was. I did that to relationships too. Didn't pay enough attention? You've seen it happen. So what we're going to be doing this on a faster and faster and faster basis. In other words, it used to be that there was only so much happening in a certain period of time, only so much happening, and there was only so many intentions in a certain period of time. You know, so many opportunities or openings, and there's so many intentions. So each one of these is like a coincidence. A coincidence of intent and opportunity. What we're seeing now, though, is that there's this rapid acceleration here of more intentions and more, it's sort of like sheets for kale, you know, red count. So what we have is lots and lots more synchronicities and coincidences. Have you noticed? You send out an intention, and bam, it meets an opportunity right away. So this whole thing is going to be working faster and faster and faster. When you send out an intention, it's going to come like that. It's going to manifest right there, which is part of this stability here. As you see it working quicker and quicker and quicker, you're going to become more and more certain, more and more stable about the fact that you can manifest your own reality, that you already are, and you can get better and better at it. And this is the steering wheel, more or less, of these four little things right there. Are there questions about that? Anybody got any questions about this? Yes?
Yeah, what is being the future?
Being the future. Well, you're being in the present, what we consider the present, although, you know, everything is happening all at the same time. Future, the past, all that, right? Well, out of all the potentiality of what could happen in the next few moments, what's the most likely thing to happen? What you intend. This has been the way it's been your whole entire life. From your first breath, you have intended your next one, haven't you? You know that we breathe 21,600 times a day? So there's 21,600 intentions that showed up in your life every day. You know, we're all, nobody looks like they're starving. Everybody has intended to eat a meal a day at least, right? And that showed up. What most shows up in your life is what you intend. And that's true for everybody. Up until, and maybe even including, when you die. So what we're saying is that faster and faster, what you intend is going to show up, and more exactly what you intend. This trend is already going on. I mean, the whole deal of life is picking what you want to pay attention to, right? You pick what you want to pay attention to. Well, in the 200 years ago, there was a certain amount of things you could pay attention to. Now, there's, I mean, not just natural things to pay attention to, but there's all the media, all the different kinds of media presentations you can pay attention to. You've got more and more choice of more and more fine-tuned intention of what you're going to pay attention to. And it's going to continue and continue. So we have just a vista of more and more and more possibility. And the only thing that would hold you back from being able to participate fully in the whole of this is your integrity. When your integrity goes out, then you're not paying attention to the present moment. You can't really have an intention from that point, and you're disconnected from source. So ethics and integrity are the absolute key.
Of our presentation by Xel Lungold on the Mayan calendar. Let's welcome Ian back.
It's quite wonderful that you have this center made available to all of us. Thank you very much. During the break, we had a couple of questions, and I was going to have the people ask those questions again on tape. So one of the questions from over here, And what was the question again was?
The question is, where did the Maya people get the information from to begin with?
Okay, where did the Mayan people get this information to begin with? Well, we don't precisely know. We have their own legends is all we really know about it. And that in their legends they say that a person or a god by the name of Itzam Na came down to the Mayan people and delivered information about language, writing, mathematics, and the calendar. So they received this information as a gift. Where Itzam Na came from and where he went, we don't really know. And frankly, it's none of our business. Where they got it. It's much more important what we do with the information now. They have sacrificed generations to hold this information. While the Catholics and the Jesuits and the corporate powers that be have pummeled the Mayan civilization, while their books and knowledges have been destroyed by the Catholic Church, they held this information as best they could. There are 8 million Maya still living in Central America, a very low percentage of them with any knowledge of their own culture. Very small percentage actually still follow the calendar and follow traditional ways. Yeah, it's been quite a journey for them. But they have held this information and passed it forward to us. We have added to their information with all the science that we now have, and it's come more full circle, or we're now receiving back the information, some of it, that the Maya had probably accumulated, but was burned by the Catholics. So, to answer that question. And then there was another question. I believe the question was, how much room did it take on the stone at Koba to present all this information? And there's a huge stone there, the calendar stone is what we call it, and it's in the Grotto of Kings. And the stone stands, probably 12 feet high. It's covered with glyphs. And one side of that 12-foot high monument is a bunch of Mayan writing. And all the writing that's on it, all that's there, is just the periods of time. How long was this period of time? How long was that period of time? How long was this period of time? In other words, the structure. What Coleman had done is filled in with our scientific